So good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live, thing that we do every Monday afternoon to try and figure out the future of smarter buildings. So good to have you with us today. Looks like we're going to be a little light today all around. Not sure why, but it is Columbus Day and it's also apparently Thanksgiving in Canada. So we just have to deal with that. So in case you're wondering who we are, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org. And just remember that views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. And let's make this as interactive as possible on the Zoom chat. Especially today, we're probably going to need your contribution more than normally because there aren't that many of us. And if you want anything from this slide deck, it's also available on mondaylive.org. So head over there. So this being October, we're talking this month about specifying information. Had a good conversation last week about this. A lot of that was around BIM and the construction process. So we'll probably touch on that today, but we'll move on to today. We really want to talk about the normal sort of news and trends, what's going on. But then we really want to talk about specifying information in the context of how do you specify information exchange? In other words, moving between systems. How do we think about that? So we're going to brainstorm around this concept and really looking forward to that. But before we get into that, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Sinclair. Ken,
Thanks,
what's going on?
What we're encouraging is we're encouraging everyone to become the storyteller they actually are and basically come online and change their words, their elevator pitches to HTML creations and posts complete with videos and whatever they need to get their story across. And I think that's an important function that we're providing. So we're more or less just a platform, and we have folks publishing on that. Up at the top, we've got space strategies. This is an event that we're a media sponsor of, and we've been doing a lot of that. This basically takes your message to different places that they probably wouldn't have got to. Kimon is speaking at this event. It's a good focused event, and that's what we're always trying to do, is trying to get our message out to more and more people. The one below that, the Beyond 96, that's talking that 96% of the information that we do generate now is never used. And we're trying to make all of this information a lot more usable. So that's a summary of last Monday's. The one below is a post by Kimon, and it's part of a series. It's part 3 of a series. So he's been writing a whole bunch about what happens when buildings don't talk. Commodity does. So that's good. The gist of what we're doing is we're turning you into a publisher. So as you come on as a sponsor or come in as a contributing editor, it's you are publishing. You've got your own platform. You can say what you want when you want, and that's been working out quite well. It gives us, we're billing it as a resource built by the industry for the industry. And it's just to keep going on that. We go over to the right-hand side. We are a media sponsor of the Smart Buildings, which is an event that's just coming up in, I think, a week here now in London. And as you can see, they've got 3,500 folks coming in there. And we're a media sponsor of that. And quite a few of our sponsors are participating. There's a common theme coming. There's quite a few of our sponsors are involved in various of these events, and I think that's a common trend. Down at the bottom of that, we've got our AHR sessions, which we're planning for Vegas right now. The picture there that says navigating complexity, escalating opportunity today, tomorrow, is basically now been posted on the AHR site. And so we'll be filling that up, getting most of the speakers going. If you click on that, it takes you to the AHR site showing our events all for February 2nd, 2026 in Vegas. I popped that 5G thing in there because this is another thing that we need to kind of watch is we're doing what we're trying to change the world, and the world's changing faster than we can catch up with it to lay our changes on top of it. And just a simple thing like the 5G network and this slicing and the fact that from a machine to machine thing that we can actually create methods of passing information back and forth. It all kind of fits. So we have to kind of watch how technology is changing and try and get our minds around that. So there's a bit more information about that if you click on that. All of these icons are live when you have it. And I think that's about it. Anto, back to you.
Thank you, Ken. So over to Rick. What's going on, Rick? Muted.
Muted.
You'd think I'd know the pattern by now. So yeah, a lot going on with C4SB, and I was just telling Ken that I think to his astonishment or delight that we will finally have a C4SB update. It's a little bit overdue, and we'll highlight the work of the working groups in this update, where we'll talk about the different work that's underway. So we'll highlight a little bit from each of the working groups in that update, and then we'll tease a little bit more of the planning for AHR and the storytelling that we intend to do around the PAE building. So I just wanted to spend a second on those two things. What we're doing relative to AHR. In the past, we've had a summit and we've had a session on Wednesday, and then we've also had some speaking things. We're going to be a little more targeted in what we're doing for AHR this year, planning for AHR, and we're going to be trying to highlight the messaging or the pieces that are associated with the working groups. So each working group would have an opportunity to highlight what it is doing or what they are doing, and how that fits into the AHR 3 days or whatever it is what we're working on now. So between having booth on the show floor and having some of the messages be fitting into different educational sessions, and then having a yet to be named sort of summit or some sort of event, we do intend to have a flow of different things at AHR. So we're actively doing that. The second thing was the storytelling around what's happening with the PAE building. And as of the last week or so, we've been given free rein to be able to start talking about how the PAE building, which is in Portland, is a great demonstration of quite a few of the working group projects, and how the different open source efforts, the different standards-based efforts are actually being demonstrated in that building. It works as a kind of a great laboratory for being able to point out some of the gaps that need to be filled, some of the gaps that have been filled, some of the new things that we're doing. And so we're going to be talking a lot more about how the work is showing up and becoming real at the PAE building. So in the past weeks, we've had somebody kind of jump in and give a little bit of an update on one of the specific pieces, but I this week, with a few people being missing, I thought we'd just kind of highlight the fact that AHR is a focus, and then the PAE storytelling is a focus. So that's our C4SB update. If there's any questions, take them, or shoot me a note, or shoot one of us a note, and we'll go from there.
Rick, can you just speak to what the PA building is all about and
Yeah.
why it is an interesting
Yeah.
project?
And we've kind of hinted about it a little bit on Monday Live and on other meetings, but um, what the PAE building is a 50,000 square foot building in Portland. It's relatively new. It's got a ton of different really interesting, physical systems, we'll say, whether it's solar panels or battery or grid connectivity, certainly a BAS um, and really interesting networking capability. So there's this real building that we've been sort of turned loose on to, or several of us have been turned loose on to say, how would we instrument the building? How would we create a more unified data, I'll say data layer or data accessibility from the different systems that are in the building? And then how those different systems can be sort of composed into new kinds of solutions or apps. So it's a real building, not a imaginary building. It's got real systems that have been disconnected or siloed. Hey, how about that for a concept? Even a relatively new building, all the different systems that were intended to be part of one common architecture. It turns out that the way that those systems were delivered, the systems were in silos. So whether it's the lighting system, the electrical system, the metering system, the solar system, all the different systems were basically delivered the way most either construction or major retrofits are, which contractors delivered everything the way they typically do, and the owner ends up with a siloed systems, siloed data, siloed physical, siloed apps, and what we are intending to show is that if you do things just a little bit differently, modify the different systems just a little bit, or sometimes significantly, you can have a completely different experience in terms of the digital experience of the building and completely different experience of how the building can be operated across the life cycle. So like I said, real building, real systems, really siloed, and we're bringing them together.
Did you touch on the how to specify the information, or did it cause you, is that what caused this discussion we're having?
Yeah, absolutely. The intent is to then stop and say, okay, now how should this have been specified? But more importantly, not to recreate history of that building, but to say for the next building, for the next major retrofit, or for the next new construction, how would you change the specifying process to ensure that you would end up with this different kind of outcome? So you'd end up without silos, with apps that go across the life cycle, with apps that go across the silos. How would you do that? And how would you change the workflow? How would you change specifying? And then the other aspect, which I didn't ask, is what would be the tangible financial benefits, the tangible comfort benefits, energy benefits? How would the experience be different in calculatable and predictable ways? So specifying, changing outcomes, changing expectations. That's what we intended. The stories we intend to tell around this building.
And what's C4SB's position in this? Are they just attempting to try and document all of this, or are they an active partner, or how, like, contractually, how do you fit with the building? Or yeah, what's your relationship to the building? Maybe that would help me understand.
So there was a team established to bring together the pieces, and C4SB is we're just a convener. Our role, the C4SB role is to in some ways be the convener and then the reporter, and then the encourager of like, okay, let's document the total cost of ownership impact. Let's make sure we're getting as many different working groups to understand the opportunity to demonstrate their sort of whatever their piece is. So convening, reporting, and trying to get as much bang for the buck, yeah, of the experience as possible.
And how many of your groups were you able to involve, since they're on the screen there now?
Yeah, looking at so certainly Division 2525 will be one of the outcomes. TXO is involved. The FDD and analytics will be a layer, isn't quite yet. Semantic buildings is deep in it. The IBB project, we're demonstrating IBB
Wow.
technology there as a new way to be able to connect to systems. The BACnet piece, that's interesting because we're going to document multiple different BACnet systems being made to be cloud native, but that part is sort of more of a documentation piece. There's nothing LAN in there right now. Number 8, let's see, the open building stack is that's being demonstrated. Cloud BIM is with Keymon piece, and that's absolutely one of the key parts. Digital twins will potentially be able to show a digital twin interface to all the different systems at some point, and that's one of the key things. Grid interactive buildings, holy cow, they've decided that, yeah, they'd like to be able to connect to the utility and leverage the fact that the utility is looking to be able to do a demo of a new kind of grid interactivity. Connection profiles was one of the key things that they were attracted to. And have I missed anything? Asset Leadership Network is actually the organization that has been pulling everything together. And yeah, so I can connect the dots to every one of the working groups.
This is great. Like, this is a great story. So can we get it out of your head and into like a post? That would be great. I think it would help. What you just did is you made me understand better what C4SB does, which is a lot of people are kind of on the outside are kind of struggling to find out what it is you're exactly doing. And I think that was a great summation of what it is you're doing and with a real example inside of it. So I think that's a great story. As a group, we need to get that story out.
That's great feedback. We had hoped to get to this point, and as of a week or so ago, I mean, worst case, we were going to have individual stories, but it turns out to be a best case where you can show for instance, how the semantic buildings piece is actually being implemented. So 223P is underlying the RDF data architectures of most of the different systems. I won't get too into the weeds, but it's been really cool to see how everything has come together. And then PAE has said, yes, let's tell the story. Don't hold back. Let's get out there.
Great. Great story.
Okay. Look forward to reading about all of that on automated buildings in a few weeks.
Now I've got
All
them
right.
committed now.
I'm drinking a Canada Dry just for
All right. Anything else from anyone else? David, do you have anything to report on or chat about before we move on?
I wasn't prepared to speak, but I think one of the things that I'm very closely paying attention to is the depreciation changes in new construction. And the current administration has changed the rules to greatly accelerate depreciation of new construction. And so this could have big impacts. Ideally, it's looking for incentivizing the creation of more data centers and industrial spaces and for manufacturing. But it could have also great impact for other ground up construction because we are simply not building like we have been in decades past. And this is going to have follow-on effects. What we're talking about in this forum is for both new construction and primarily existing buildings. But there's a big opportunity through depreciation to create new buildings that are radically more smart and efficient. So it's something we should help encourage our owners or developers that are doing new projects to look into the depreciation side of things.
Is it material? Is it significant, the changes?
Yeah, basically buildings, different aspects of a building have traditionally been depreciated over a 39-year period. And when you look at BMS systems and technology systems, they actually have typically a 3-year depreciation. Now it's 1 year for everything, which messes up. It just seems crazy, but that's what's going on right now.
1 year for everything, not everything in the building, or not the whole building itself?
Yes, the whole building.
Depreciate the whole building in 1 year?
Yes.
You won't
That's
be
kind
done
of
in time
severe.
to replace it. Yeah. Have to start the next one beside it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I don't know what to think about
It
that.
changes the math for
Mhm.
sure.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, let us move on then to specifying information. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, Jennifer. Considering it takes more than a year to build, how comes it gets depreciated in a year? That's kind of a little bit bizarre. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Okay, so what we want to do today is we want to do a bit of a brainstorming around how do you exactly think about specifying information exchange. We talked last week a little bit about the fact that information fundamentally is something that moves from system to system. It is really the movement of information that actually creates value. Information just stuck somewhere is not really very useful until it's being used. So it's all about movement of data. And so movement of data, which is really some information. And we also spent quite a bit of time last week talking about the master format. Cyril spent quite a bit of time talking about stuff together with Kimon about how this gets used in the mapping of some of the stuff that he was doing. Maybe he can come and join us on the panel as well today to actually dig in a little bit more. And Rick was really sort of making the point, and I'm sure he's going to do that today, that these 50 divisions, or the 35 of them that's listed here, are essentially how you procure stuff and how things get procured and contracted and how buildings get built and any refurbs that actually happens. It all happens in one of these divisions, because it's the division that then forms the specification that then goes into a contract that then gets executed. So the point there is that these things in these boxes are essentially the only things you can buy if you're a building owner. It is the transaction vehicles. These are these boxes, right? So the sort of the consequence of that is that if you're trying to sell something that's not in one of these boxes, is really, really, really hard, because there is no vehicle in the industry, in the construction and the building industry, to procure and actually do it. That's kind of the. Can you just elaborate on that, Rick? Because
Yeah, so procurement and delivery, as defined by the AIA, has been a practice that dates back hundreds and hundreds of years, or at least hundreds. Um, and the contracts around how buildings are either built or renovated, or separately from that, there's maintenance projects, and there's other small. There's ways that small amounts of money are spent, but anytime any significant amount of money is spent, it has to fall into one of these approved procurement and delivery mechanisms or processes. And we've all heard about design, build, build. Performance contracting is actually sometimes approved for as procurement delivery mechanism, sometimes not. But those structures of procurement and delivery then all refer to these 50 divisions to and not every project has 35 divisions or whatever it is. Some projects are only landscaping and plumbing, for instance. Another project might only be an HVAC project. Another project might only be, or the contracts might be broken up into multiple different bid packages or contracting packages. But I mean, fundamentally, this is, as you said, you may not realize it, but the way your product is being procured is and contracted for is through this process. So yeah, we've been trying to get creative around saying, well, I'd like to be able to have my software for maintenance management be bought as part of a construction or major retrofit. Well, there's actually a place and way that you can kind of do that. Now there's yeah, sure, there are other processes where people buy things for their buildings. You know, the way that people buy a phone system or the way they buy IT infrastructure. They can go out and they can do an RFI or an RFP to buy the network cabling or the network installation or whatever. But more often than not, it's actually going to be slid into one of these divisions even. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. And Cyril, thanks for your comment. I'll bring you in a minute. I just want to frame up this sort of what we want to do here. So what we want to do here is to sort of almost randomly, and it's obviously it's not random because there has to be a little bit of thought, take any two of these divisions and figure out how you would exchange information between them or what the purpose is, right? So here's the first one that we'll work on, right? Imagine the conveying equipment, which is number 14, which is this thing here, which is all about escalators, moving walkways, elevators, and all that kind of stuff in a building, right? How would that, in what kind of information exchange could exist between that whole division and the electrical side, which is obviously to do with electrical panels and all that kind of stuff? Right. So why would there be a need to actually exchange information between these two? Right. So we kind of want to dig into that, and maybe there isn't, and maybe there is, and maybe we can be creative, and then try some others. Electronic safety and security, which is really access control, and furnishing, which is really all the furniture in the building. What information exchange could usefully exist between them? Picked another one, openings, which is doors in buildings, doors or openings in the walls, right? And HVAC, what useful information exchange could happen between these two? Take another one here, which is between equipment and process interconnections. And I picked process interconnections number 40. Sounds really boring because it's mostly to do with manufacturing stuff. But Rick identified the CMMS, or no, IWMS is typically described in number 40, right? So there must be some relationship between equipment and the building and IWMS. What could they be, right? And what could they be between HVAC and pollution control, which maybe in modern times, this is really what ESG is all about. And then, you know, this can go on and on, but the sort of the idea is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the first one here, and I'm going to go to edit mode and see what we can do to sort of see if there's any sense in this sort of approach of thinking about stuff.
Was there a reason
And
that you didn't have 25, section 25 there?
no, we can put it there if you want.
Well,
We
I
can,
just, you know, like it would seem to me the most obvious to
well,
transfer information back and forth.
I think the reason I left it out is because it is the most obvious. I want
Okay.
to
Okay.
explore the
Well, that's a good
least
answer.
obvious.
Yeah, that's a great
Okay.
answer. Okay, that's why it's not
Right.
there. Good.
Right. And I'll also bring Cyril on, but would love to get your comments, Rick and Ken and David, about this process or this idea of brainstorming in this way. Are we just going to be wasting our time here, or are we going to be doing something useful? Rick?
Well, I wanted to hear from Cyril, and then we'll dig in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anto, and all of you, thank you for having me join. Can you go back one page, please? So I think I'm gonna step back and review what Rick was describing, and I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into how that's actually, sort of the workflow. When you look at these divisions, the divisions are divided into 6 characters. The first 2 characters represent the division. So O8 are always openings, doors and windows and openings in the wall. And then there are a series of numbers beyond that. There's always 6 digits. And when you look at the main CSI structure, there's various classifications built within a single division. And there could be dozens or hundreds of them. And what's interesting is that when Rick was describing how procurement is done, I recently had a conversation with someone who was very involved in MasterFormat. I didn't know, which I thought was manufacturers will take that MasterFormat division structure. They'll of course take all of the assets that they have, put them into the specific 6-bucket or 6-digit group or bucket, but then you can go much further. You can add 2 more digits, dot 2 more digits, dot 2 more digits, and in essence have the manufacturer create their own MasterFormat number that's unique to anyone else using it. And if the architect or the engineer or the contractor are specifying that particular MasterFormat number, which actually is the manufacturer's piece of equipment, kudos to the manufacturer to be able to have that specified, because then the contractor looks at it and says, oh, I got to take that one right there, done by carrier 527A device. And so it's sort of an interesting structure that this MasterFormat structure can spread to literally down to a particular asset with a unique MasterFormat value. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of procurement, that's part of the process. It's actually quite slick.
Just a quick question.
Can you then sort of lead to, does that help this sort of process of thinking about the information that then exists in that division and all of the 6-digit sort of children of that division, if you think about it that way?
When you bring it down to the component level, every manufacturer is going to have their own data structure that describes what their asset is. So the conveying systems are going to have all the electrical and connections and equipment and types of articles that have to be replaced, how they connect to the electrical. I think this is a good combination, because obviously that conveying system has to connect to electrical. There has to be what you call the connecting profiles between the panel box and this conveying equipment. I can see sensors. I can see there's so many different things that can be that would connect that relationship. Off the top of my head, I think that in terms of the specifications, again, the manufacturer will provide a whole list of things. How the owner decides to use them or incorporate that into let's say a BIM model, that remains to be seen. For us, that's the disconnect, is that there's no data structure that's being told by the contractor installing that particular elevator.
Well, that's what we're trying to get to specify, right?
Okay.
Sort of what are
Yeah.
the data structures? So
I'm gonna bring up collectives. Yeah, go ahead.
no, so in this sort of pairing, right? And it could be
Right.
any pairing. We could pick any
Sure.
of the other divisions if we want to, right?
Sure.
What would be an example use case for information being exchanged between these two?
Well,
Give me 1 second.
the key, I think, was okay, so we're picking a couple of pairs. the reality is there's an infinite
Countless.
number of potential
Like
use
it's
cases that are
50,
setting up.
50
But
squared,
we're
right?
right. So we're 35 squared, right? Or cubed
Yeah.
or what, God knows what. But the point is by brainstorming around what could be useful, it maybe opens up people's
Right.
imaginations to, oh, okay, that's great. I wanted to go off of one of the things Cyril said was though that there's all kinds of interesting information that the manufacturer of the conveying equipment actually will include in their, what is that, division 14? Okay. So they will have included the schedule of the different data, oh gosh, the secret decoder ring for how to do, how to interpret the maintenance codes, whatever. It'll all be in that 14. But what we're trying to say is that some of that information that they've put in 14 is actually useful over in 26 or in 20, and to jump ahead to the punchline, maybe, and this is maybe what Ken was saying, is 25 is potentially where all of the different interconnections should be captured. But to get people's attention, because the way things are done now, and I know Cyril has seen this, everybody's seen this, is that the manufacturers, they get this bid package that comes out that is really focused on just their part. They price up what they see in Division 14. They put in their all the details about their product. But see, they're not seeing the other divisions. They're only seeing the bid package for their thing. And so they may even submit a Revit diagram, to be able to plug into the BIM model that has incredible detail, but they're not seeing the other divisions. In some cases, I'm exaggerating, but in some cases, I'm not, because a lot of the mechanical contractor only sees, or the electrical contractor only sees the part that the general contractor or the lead feels is important for that particular contractor. So this is why we're doing this exercise. I feel like is that we're trying to expand people's thinking to realize that some of the data that's probably could have been just easily opened up or turned on or made compatible could easily be done if there was some unifying motivation and unifying tool and unifying place where the specifications happen and also where the data ended up. Real quick on the PAE building, this happened just last week where the discussion all of a sudden came to be, okay, well, we're going to get all this data from the different systems, electrical systems, HVAC systems, the solar panels, everything. Where are we going to put it? And forget about what was going to be named, but where are we going to put it actually came up. And that shouldn't be up to one of the system providers. It needs to be the owner that says, here's where you're going to put it. Here's what you're going to name it. Here's how you're going to structure it. But if it's the blind leading the blind, you can't blame anybody for
Right.
the sort of chaos that we have.
So I put a Y in here. Make sure escalators work during the hour. Right. I'm not sure that's the best use case I can, but it's one. Right. Probably the escalator manufacturer and the electrical panel manufacturer probably didn't think about it. So
Right.
does that statement make sense at all, or is this going down a path that doesn't go anywhere?
This is actually a good example. And I think Tristan was on the call too. It's like during a demand response event, what loads might be shiftable or avoidable or turn offable,
Right.
and which ones wouldn't. And who better to ask than the owner might not even know what could be shifted in a conveying system or avoided during a demand response event. Could I shut down the use of 3 out of the 6 elevators, for instance? Or could I lock them out? so that so yeah, people might have to wait longer to get to the floor they want, but it's like, it's a demand response event, so it's a little bit of a hassle. But unless you know what the capabilities of the addressability of the device are, you don't know whether you can include that that system in a demand response event or not.
Right, so I put a context here because it's now an elevator bank, right? So there are 6 elevators. So this is where we care about that the escalators behave themselves during DR event.
Yeah,
Presumably at
to
least
get
one running.
May I interject, please?
absolutely.
So usually it's an operations decision which lifts get power during a demand response event. Usually elevators have to be kept running for fire and life safety. But where this really comes into play is during a blackout situation when you switch over to running on generators. And when you're running on generators, you obviously can't power every lift, and you have to be very strategic about which lifts are powered to enable firefighters to rescue people and evacuate people and things like that. Unfortunately, none of that would come from the Division 14 spec and be relayed to the electrical contractor. I don't think from my experience. And usually deciding which lifts are going to be operating during a blackout and run on generator power is something that falls through the cracks. And this is obviously why we're talking about this stuff. But this is where the lift provider would need to indicate to, if the lift provider even knew or even talked about it, would indicate which of the 6 lifts are going to stay powered up from generator power. And so this would be a very limited thing saying elevator 6, which is also our freight elevator, is going to be the one that remains powered during a blackout event when we're running on emergency power.
In a hospital, that is crystal clear. Like it's the driving thing is it's obvious, it's the OR, it's they give you that list. It's the whole main function of the power control is a complete specification that you have to adhere to anytime you're working in a hospital. So yeah, just so each
how would
that's a great point.
How would a hospital do something like this that is dependent on something else? One system is dependent on something else. How would that work?
Normally in the specification process, they have to design the generators and backup power to be able to supply all the power required for all the things that need power during an emergency event. And so it's the electrical engineer's job to work with the operations team to go through everything in every panel and decide what's still going to get power or be on UPS.
The other
and so typically,
sorry,
go ahead.
Go, Dave.
So the electrical engineer usually takes inventory of all the energy consuming systems and goes through all the panels and actually usually groups everything that needs to stay on generator power onto common panels with common feeders vertically. So the generator power distribution happens in the easiest manner possible.
Okay, the other complication that happens in this whole scenario in a hospital is during a demand response, we actually start the generators, and that is rather than shedding power, we basically substitute the purchase power for generated power. And this solves a whole bunch of other problems. One of the big problems with on-site generation is that it has to be run every month or even more often. And this solves the problem is if you can actually use it for peaking. So anyway, it gets complicated. So it becomes, it drives the whole process. that specification, and it's not done in in this format that I've ever seen.
Well, it's not done. It's not done in here. Neither is it done in here, right? So typically, it's not done in. Is that right?
I see, yeah, and I see that Cyril's got his hand up, but I just want to make the point. Guess where else it's not done? It's not done in the building automation system. This is
I was going to
it's
say BIM.
It
it
was
might be
always done
done
in
in
my
BIM.
automation systems. Where else would you,
well,
if you're doing it in
well,
real
if it's
time?
spec, is it included in the spec then for the building automation system to pick up the points and for the visualization and for the graphics and for that data to be made available, you know, to a dashboard like in real time, not in 15-minute polling. And that's where, again, that is the BAS the right place for that data to be shown? And Cyril has an opinion on that and on something else too. Sorry to have jumped in front of you, Cyril.
No, it's all good. It's all good, Rick. Thank you. Can I show my screen real quick, Anto? Because I think this, you asked a question at the beginning, and I can show you an example of, in terms of elevators, what might be asked
I don't
for.
want to get too focused on elevators. The point of this
Okay.
exercise
Yeah.
is how do you specify the information, the exchange between two divisions that are very clearly, we all understand how to specify them, right? We all understand how to specify 14 or 23 or all of these things because we've studied them, right? So what we're trying to explore here is between these two, and these just random two, right? Or between these two. This is basically access control system and furnitures. What are the use cases here? Asset tracking or furniture.
Quick answer to how we documented it is we basically, the control language in the building automation system became the documentation of it. Whatever it was told to do, that was there, and you had to be able to read.
But this specific one's got nothing to do with the HVAC system because this is an access control system and the furnitures.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's got nothing to do with BAS or temperatures or anything.
Yeah.
That's why we're picking sort of random pairing, just to sort of highlight that. This one is HVAC and openings. Openings is obviously just openings in the walls, whether it's doors or otherwise.
So we would have door and window switches.
I mean, fire, you know, for whatever, if there's a fire, the doors are automatically activated to close for certain instances.
Right.
You know, that's an example of how openings would behave in terms of HVAC equipment, the connections there.
Right, and depending on how many openings are open or closed, you can then also influence the HVAC to behave slightly differently. Right?
Absolutely. Sure.
Right. Where is that specified? Is it specified in the openings?
Where I would go to find it would be in the control language.
Okay, so in this
Where's
one,
it specified?
because you can think in 23, because that's just the way it is, you think it needs to be here, and it's probably right. But it's not always the case if you then move something else, like this one here. There's equipment in the building, and there is process interconnection, which in this case, because of Rick's discovery, this is the IWMS, right? So how do you specify information between some random lab equipment in the building and the IWMS? Where do you do that?
It's in the digital twin. I mean, I'm just thinking of, you know, as an example, Comon's system, where if there's a fire in a room, the room sensor is activated. It should ideally impact what the door's behavior, the HVAC systems that are venting or opening up to let the smoke, you know, leave. Louvers. I mean, there's all kinds of. I mean, ideally, that's how it should work. In my mind, it's the digital twin where those relationships happen.
Yeah, just one second.
I think we may need to make a very
clear. Wait, 1 second. Go ahead.
I think we need to make a very clear clarification here. Are we talking about to build it? Or are we talking about during operations once the building is running a live data exchange? Which one?
To specify the information that would be needed for this to, so it's before it's built then.
So once it's built and operating, what we're specifying here is the data exchange that's going to happen between these two systems.
At operation time.
Okay. All right. Can you go back to your FF&E and access control? Okay. So large value assets like art and certain pieces of furniture can be tagged with RFID tags. And you can have sensors to know if those elements have left the space they're in, meaning it used to be a 1, now it's a 0. It's not there, and it triggers an alarm.
In what system? It triggers an alarm in what
In the
system?
access control system, it would trigger the alarm for the security person. So it's actually the
So does
furnishing.
does it get specified in the access control system?
Yes, it has to be in both, because you need the RFID tag to be installed on the furniture. And that could be actually done by the access control contractor, but typically I've seen it done because the access control contractor doesn't know what's the Herman Miller chair I'm supposed to put in. I don't have any fucking clue.
We're coming up on time, I see, but I think the exercise of, for me, to me, this is like Ken's describing. There was a time when all different systems, there was only one way in or out of a building, and that was the HVAC system. That was the control system. There was one control system. But now we've got digital systems that are associated with everything, with digital system associated with art, is what I just heard. And my guess is the RFID system for the expensive Herman Miller chair or the artwork that is in the lobby, they are not saying that that should be tracked in the HVAC control system. And that's kind of the point about this whole exercise, is that we've got digital capabilities across all these different divisions now, and the place where control used to happen, or observability or visualization happened, is just not as clear anymore. So digital twin, whoever said it should happen in the digital twin, pretty sure it was Cyril, is, and I see that Doug Migliore was on here, that the digital twin is probably the answer, because that's the more generic place where all things can be tied to. But guess what's not in any one of the divisions? Digital twin.
Where's the digital twin here? How do you buy it?
Right.
So I've had it specified in 25, and I've also had the IWMS in 25, and also RFID systems in 25. It all depends on which contractor's deploying them. But we would include, when I used to do this all the time, we would have required outcomes in the Division 25 spec, and it would say, here's the required outcome. Any valuable furniture
which
worth over
which is basically this, right?
Yep. But we'd specify the tag, the manufacturer, we'd specify the frequency range, the protocol, the RFID read that would be installed. That would typically be on the IP network. And so the thing that is the most crucial is, how do you get all of these systems onto a converged IP network? And that, to me, is the golden ticket to get everything to work, because we put it in Div 25 because 27 isn't the right place for it. Because every single contractor with a control system needs to get their either have their devices DHCP or provide the MAC addresses to the owner's IT group. And so the key thing to making the magic happen is to include getting all of these control systems onto a converged IP network. And that's like table stakes for anything else to happen.
Right, but that in itself does not do these definitions of information flow. It's just
It enables
the
them
infrastructure
to actually happen.
enables them. Yeah.
Otherwise, they can't. And
Well, it gets
that's what always was missing from every project is how do you get everything onto the IP network with the client's IT and security team.
So the IP network is potentially one of the ways to get everything on the physical, the use cases
To get the data to exchange between everything.
To get the data to be exchangeable.
available, right?
Right.
There's
Yes.
Wouldn't some of this fall back in the general, that you would actually identify in the general section that this building is going to have automatic?
It's a great
control?
question. What we would do in general,
Yeah,
Ken,
we put a lot in
is
there.
that we would put, what we would put in general is that most of the trades were not familiar with Div 25 or using Div 25. And we put
Right.
in the general conditions that they had to look at their scope in Division 25. And
Right.
they had to provide an individual broken out number for the scope in Division 25, or their bid would be forfeit and not considered at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the PAE building, back to the PAE building, they spec that everything needed to be on an IP network. It is. Data isn't exchangeable, but it's all there. So the spec needed to go up the spec needed to go up the food chain to be about the data and about the applications that were going to use the data. But the spec kind of stopped at the physical. And everybody put a check mark in the box and said, "Yep, I connected to." Except for the water heater people, they didn't bother to connect to anything.
So this incidentally is why we did this thing a couple of years back on Monday Live and C4SB, the smarter stack. And we're nearly out of time, so we're not going to dig into this, but maybe we'll spend some time on the smarter stack the rest of this month. But it's kind of thinking about why do you need things and who's actually going to be doing it and how does it get delivered and everything else.
Okay, just a quick close then, or that I was thinking about is, in the general, we would generally list the mandatory requirements of what it is we were trying to do, especially if they were sort of non-traditional things that weren't done in a building. And like automatic demand control and generation and all that. And they would be described in just mandatory requirement kind of words. And then that would link to various sections. The other thing we did is we also carried prime cost sums. And we would actually take stuff right out of the contract and we'd have the contractor carry the money for that. And then we would basically contract that and give it back to them. Which is another way of dealing with that. Anyway.
Yeah, the general conditions or whatever it is, 1 or 0 or whatever that is where what David is describing and what you're describing, Ken, is that's where you give people the heads up of like, you better go make damn sure you have read 25. And you think you are only paying attention to 17 or to 23 or whatever, but you better go check 25.
Yeah.
So Cyril, you get the last word here as we close out.
I think one thing that ties all of these different divisions together in my mind is the map. That all these different pieces that exist in the building all are related to where they are in the building as a map. So I think as a foundation, in my mind, that's the starting point, making sure that whatever division you're talking about, if we know where it is, that begins the conversation about how these different pieces of items, interact together. So I'll just throw that out there.
And I'm sorry to take the last word from the last word, but
You go ahead.
it's the part that is just not done. As simple as that is, it just doesn't get done because
Right.
it's not specified, it's not enforced, and
Right.
contractors, like you said last week, it's like you don't put a location on the part of the spec until it reaches a certain design phase, or until it's built or something like that. I can't
Installed,
remember how to
right.
describe that. Yeah, until it's installed, and then you put the geolocation on it. And that process, that workflow is that's one of the things we hope that we can point out with the PAE building. It's like that's a workflow change that just ought to be become more commonplace.
Exactly. Exactly. That should be the minimum of what's provided to the owner at handover. Just locating all the assets and then whatever data goes along with it. So
Okay, so let us wrap on that. Thank you, Cyril, for joining us. Thanks,
thank you for
everyone
having me.
else. And hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you back next week where we'll continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.